It looks like it's going to be quarterbacks. Drew Bledsoe, Rick Meyer, 1-2. How 1-2? Who would you pick one, Joe?
How 1-2? I would probably, if I was New England, I would take Rick Meyer. The reason I would take Rick Meyer is because I think that he could sell tickets in the New England area to the Notre Dame fans. As far as their athletic ability goes, both these young men compare very favorably. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Drew Bledsoe. Throws the ball a little bit quicker, gets it out a little bit quicker.
The Patriots select Drew Bledsoe, quarterback, Washington State University.
There's Drew Bledsoe, young man from Washington State.
Joining me today, it's such a pleasure to welcome in my opinion, probably the most influential player in Patriots history, the man that turned this franchise around, the 1993 #1 pick and Patriots Hall of Fame quarterback, Drew Bledsoe. Drew, thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome to the show.
Absolutely, man. No, I appreciate it. You're overly kind, but that was a cool time to be a part of those teams back in the early '90s, because we went from being pretty bad to being pretty damn relevant, and there were a ton of us that were just young guys on those teams that we weren't really focused on trying to do some big cultural change. We were just trying to win a few games. But looking back, those teams that I got to be a part of, really did change, the trajectory of the organization. And now looking back, it's something I know that all of us wear as a badge of honor.
I remember back in my childhood, I couldn't even watch a home game because we couldn't even sell out the stadium. So right. Even your rookie year, that final game of the season, the Dolphins, that great comeback where you knocked them out of the playoffs, that game wasn't televised here. So my memories of that game were from listening to Gino and who was the other guy?
Yeah, Gil and Gino.
That's it, Gil and Gino.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, like I say, things changed and it became something. And then when Robert Kraft bought the team in '94, that was like the one last big piece of the puzzle, to have a local owner that really did care and does care about winning. Which surprisingly, and I was just talking with some other, football guys recently. It's kind of surprising. You would think that every professional sports owner would be motivated by winning first, and it's actually not the case. Because it can be pretty lucrative if you decide you're just not going to pay your players. You still get all the TV dollars, and you can lose games. It's almost like like the movie Major League. Intentionally try to lose because you make more money. But Robert Kraft, is and always has been a fan first, and so when he bought the team, that continued to put us on a different trajectory entirely.
Well, I wanted to get to that because most of the people that have enjoyed the success and only remember the glory days don't realize that you actually played for the owner, or you were drafted with the owner that came before Kraft, James B. Orthwein.
Yeah, Jim Orthwein. Yeah, and his mission was to move the Patriots to St. Louis before the Rams went out there. And so,
how worried were you that you might end up there?
Well, I mean, I was 21, man. I was just trying to find my way. I didn't get to think about the big picture stuff. So, and at that point, we'd only been in New England for a year and hadn't really put down roots yet. So for me, it was like, okay, well, I guess we're going to go to St. Louis, but boy, am I glad in retrospect, and I know that everybody is, that Robert Kraft and his family came in and bought the team, kept us in New England, and and then beyond that, allowed the team the financial stability and flexibility to really become a great franchise. So there are a lot of things, a lot of reasons to be thankful for the Kraft family. Otherwise it would have been the St. Louis Patriots, which I don't even know how you make sense of that.
And not only that, wasn't the Hartford you guys almost moved to Hartford?
And then almost went to Hartford as well. And so there were lots of potential moves, but ultimately, under the stewardship of the great owner, we're able to stay right there in Foxborough.
So has football always been your first love? Was that your sport growing up, or did you play a bunch of sports?
I played everything, man. I think sixth grade, I played 6 different sports in 6th grade. I was a swimmer, track, baseball, basketball. I actually wrestled, if you can believe that.
Really?
This
Wow.
skinny beanpole of a kid that wrestled, and then my first love always was snow skiing. Actually,
Really?
I was on skis from the time I was 2 years old. Matter of fact, it got me in trouble with the boss. They were working on my second contract, and I had made the mistake of coming back and telling him about this amazing helicopter skiing trip I took my dad on. And, being young and naive, I just thought, oh, that's not a big deal. Well, he looked at me kind of funny. And then, of course, in my next contract, there were some very clear language about how much money I had to pay them back if I got hurt snow skiing. Yeah, no, and then football. My dad was a football coach, so I grew up on a football field. So when you ask if it was my first love, it certainly was. It was my favorite. It was my favorite sport, but it just wasn't first. I didn't get to play organized football until 7th grade.
Wow.
So I had to play soccer, if you can imagine that.
Wow.
If you watch me play football, you can imagine that soccer was not my strong suit.
So had Vinatieri gotten injured, you may have, told Parcels, I got these extra points.
Boy, that would have ended very poorly. We would have just gone for 2. Yeah.
Did they even have the 2-point conversion when you first started?
No, that started during my career. I want to say that was maybe
94, maybe?
Might have been 94. I think that sounds accurate.
Yeah.
And little known trivia question for your listeners out there: who scored the first 2-point conversion in NFL history?
Wow.
There's
Was
actually
it
a tie. It was not me, but there was a tie back. There's a tie-in back to the Pats, and the only reason I know that is that the first 2-point conversion ever was Tom Tupa,
the punter,
who ended up being our backup quarterback and punter. Right. But he scored the first 2-point conversion playing for the Cleveland Browns. He was holding for an extra point. They ran a fake, and he ran it right up the middle for the first ever 2-point conversion. So there's your sports trivia.
You learn something new every day. I thought I knew most things about Drew's career and people he played with, but I didn't know that one. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
All right. So growing up, I know you had mentioned, we talked before, you first kind of knew you had it around, you said, did you attend a camp around 16 and you just were throwing laser beams all over the field and the instructor was like, well, what's going on?
Yeah, no, it was my dad and his buddy ran a football camp every summer. So I grew up running around chasing these guys, but they would always bring in a couple of pros to come in as coaches and counselors and to take pictures and all of that stuff. And at that point, I think I was a sophomore in high school. Neil Lomax, who was a quarterback at that time for the Cardinals, was out and he was throwing afterwards, kind of just doing a demonstration for everybody. And I got up and I was throwing with him, and it was going pretty well. And I was
the instructor here. They're probably saying
I was slinging it around pretty good to the point where finally Neil he asked me to sit down. He goes, okay, I got this, because he didn't
making me look bad, kid. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like the fact that this 16-year-old kid was, and I think he had gone to the Pro Bowl that year, and he didn't like the fact that this 16-year-old kid was up there throwing with him.
So when did the recruits, the college recruits, or
the college thing, it was, man, we were just having this conversation because it's so crazy now, man, when you got these kids as young as, like, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 years old that are committing to schools, and that stuff did not exist back in the late 80s. In order to get, and I would, it was a small little school. It wasn't like I was in a big city where, there were coaches around all the time. So I had to, we would put together VHS tapes and sit back in the old days where you take this tape, record to this tape. A lot of your younger listeners are not going to even know what I'm talking about. But we would create these tapes, and then we would send them around to coaches, and that was how we tried to get noticed. And then my top 4 schools: Washington State, Stanford was probably the third one. And then I took a recruiting trip down to the University of Miami. Wow. I knew there was no chance I was going to go to the opposite quarter.
Jimmy Johnson then?
No, it was Dennis Erikson. And the reason that Dennis knew about me is he had been at Washington State, which was right next door for us.
Right.
And then he went down to Miami, so he was aware of who I was. And I don't think anybody had, any misconception that I was going to go, 3,500 miles away from home to play football. But as a, the kid in WallaWalla, Washington, I was not turning down a trip to South Beach in the middle of the wintertime. So
Absolutely
I was definitely
not.
For
sure.
But, really, that stuff really, back to the previous topic, I mean, the stuff really didn't pick up seriously until my senior year.
Really?
That's when coaches could come around and see you. And that's when, that's when it all kind of happened. And then made my decision. I think it was February of my senior year, when I decided where I was headed and chose to go to Washington State and loved every bit of it. But man, the process now, man, these kids, everybody's got their huddle highlight video out on social media, and they just get 1 million views and they get all this stuff. And it's and then you throw the NIL stuff, the money into the deal now, and it just becomes an absolutely crazy thing. That's really kind of hard to fathom, being 15, 16-year-old kid and trying to navigate through all of that stuff. It's pretty head spinning.
Almost creates a whole new set of issues there, right? And giving 17-year-old kid.
Wild West, man. They went from a bad system that was completely broken to a system with absolutely no rules.
It's really
seems like there's some mid ground in between, a super restrictive, unfair system to the athletes and no rules. I think there's a little ground in there somewhere that hopefully they find one of these days.
So, can you tell our listeners, you played here in Boston, a crazed city where just fans live and die with the teams. But WallaWalla, totally different landscape, a lot more laid back. What were sports like there growing up? I mean, I'm sure.
It was interesting because we were certainly, or at least we thought we were, fans of our local teams and fans of our local colleges. But in the Northwest, it was like, you'd go cheer for your college team on Saturday, or maybe cheer for the Seahawks on Sunday. Baseball, the Mariners always sucked, so it really wasn't that big a thing, and there certainly was no hockey in the Northwest. But it was like, you'd go cheer for your team, and then after the game, you'd kind of just move on with your life, and and then you'd wait till the next week. Man, when I got back to Boston, it's like, oh wow, man, these people are serious about this stuff. It's nonstop, almost more of a religion in some ways than a pastime or something that you watch. And it was really cool, but it was so different.
Culture shock, I bet.
And then you combine that, when I was growing up, we had one newspaper. Even in college, we really had one paper that covered us regularly, and then all of a sudden you 4 or 5 papers in the New England area that are covering everything, and it was a totally different world. But man, it was fun to learn and fun to try to navigate through all that stuff, and ultimately to really buy into it and become kind of part of that culture was really, really cool, and something that I still totally appreciate when I get to make trips back to New England. It's really, really fun.
Now, going into the draft, Pat's obviously had the 1 pick, and you were, by all the Mel Kipers were saying it's going to be Drew. Did the Patriots let you know that, or did they kind of?
No, they didn't, man. Parcels played his cards super tight.
Really?
Yeah, because it was me and my good buddy Rick Meyer we were the consensus top 2 picks that year, and both of the top 2 teams were going to take quarterbacks, the Patriots and the Seahawks. I didn't know for sure that I was the number 1 pick until Paul Tagliabue announced it on draft day.
You're kidding.
Now, I knew I wasn't going to have to wait long, because if I didn't go there, I was going to go to the Seahawks, and Rick ended up going to the Seahawks. But yeah, no, he played his cards super tight. In previous years back then, and I don't know if it's still the case today, but in previous years, and I think in years following, the number 1 overall pick kind of already had their contract negotiated, and everything was done before draft day in many instances. And I didn't know until the very last minute that it was actually going to be New England.
Okay, so there was a little bit of stress involved on draft day for you.
It was just a crazy experience, man. It was we flew out for the draft, and that was the first time that I just have my one brother. It was the first time that both the two of us and my parents were on an airplane together.
You're kidding.
We flew back for the draft. Went back to New York City, walking around looking at the tall buildings, just like the wall of New York, like it was just small town people walking around in New York City. And then, so it was, it was a crazy time. But man, it was just a cool adventure. It was really, really cool.
All right, so you get picked by the Pats. You're in the big show now. You arrive at Foxborough. You're probably expecting this big, kind of like what they have at Patriots Place now. You get there. What were you thinking?
It was really kind of head spinning, to be honest with you, because playing at Washington State, we were probably at the bottom tier of the Pac-10 at the time. Which then became the Pac-12. Now is the Pac-2, but that's a different conversation. But we were kind of at the bottom end of the Pac-12, and our facilities were infinitely nicer than what they had at Foxborough when I arrived there. And then and then they put us up at the end zone motor inn down there. So I'm like, oh man, okay, I finally realized all my dreams have come true, and I'm number one overall pick, and I'm staying in a rat trap, motel, and going over to these facilities that were, the stands were bigger, but other than that, it was like a high school.
There was no Patriots Place, TB12,
not even a nice high school. And then we, for practice on grass, we would put all of our gear on, get in our cars, and drive 5 miles to the Rentham State School, which is the abandoned mental hospital where we had our practice fields. It was really kind of, and it was also, but there was part of it that was kind of cool because all right, we're the underdogs. We haven't had a lot of success. We've got terrible facilities. So we did sort of embrace this underdog mentality. We didn't have we didn't have all the niceties that you would see at other facilities, and so we kind of embraced it. We'd go work out hard in this little tiny weight room, and drive our cars to practice, and so we were underdogs, and we knew it, and we embraced it.
Now, when you got to the team, there was were there any vets that kind of took you under their wing? I know we had some great players still on the team, like Andre Tippet. There was some
Bruce
Armstrong. Yeah. Were there any vets that took you under their wing when you first got there? I know Scott Sequels was, I guess, the quarterback as well.
Zolak and I had a better relationship. Man, a lot of people in Boston now probably don't even know that Scott Zolak played football. Now he's just the radio guy.
That's true.
Scott was an NFL quarterback for, I think, like 11 or 12 years.
He had some great games too under McPherson.
He really did. Yeah. He matter of fact, the year before I got there, their only 2 wins were when Zolak was there. I think he was either the 3rd or 4th quarterback that had played that year. But Andre Tippet was he was awesome to me as a rookie. First of all, he was terrifying.
Sure.
One of the best linebackers ever to play.
Yeah.
He's obviously in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But Tip was he was a guy that did take me under his wing as we went forward, taught me some things, and then sometimes some pretty funny ways. There was one time we were walking back in from practice, and there were some little kids out front, because at that time, the kids could actually be right there and ask for autographs.
Sure.
And so these 2 little kids come up to ask me for an autograph, and Tip's walking with me, and he looks over and he's, "Get out of here, kids! No autographs." And I'm like, okay, so I just walk inside because Mr. Tippett says autographs. There's obviously no autographs.
Sure.
Like 5 minutes later, Tip comes down into the locker room. He goes, "Hey man, sign these. I was messing with you. I wasn't messing with the kids." Right? And so he had gone back out and grabbed the stuff from the kids and had me sign them. But he went back and explained to them, like, "Hey kids, I wasn't trying to scare you. I was actually scaring Drew," which he did. It was very effective. But Tip, he's still a good friend to these days. I just got to hang out with him last weekend when we were out there to honor Mike Vrabel, and Tip's always been a great friend. Bruce Armstrong was another guy that was just one of the baddest dudes to ever walk the planet, in a good way. His on my
Mm-hmm.
side.
Can block Bruce Smith one on one.
Yeah, exactly right.
Is a bad man in my book.
No doubt. And Bruce and I ended up having just an amazing relationship. Got to know each other very well, in spite of the fact that we grew up about as differently as you could.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ben Coates, you know, anybody that knows my career a bit knows that he was my security blanket. He was my guy. You know, if we needed a first down, I think pretty much everybody in the stadium knew that I was going to throw it to Ben, including the defense, and they still couldn't stop it. So, yeah, so there were a handful of veterans around, but it was an extremely young team. You know,
did you have Marv Cook too as a tight end when he first
had
came
Marv Cook my rookie year.
Yeah.
He'd gone to the Pro Bowl, I think, either the previous year. I think he'd been to a couple of Pro Bowls.
Yeah.
But you know, there's some funny stories when you talk to Marv and the people that are around him, because he saw Ben and he's like, "Wow, man, yeah, this is probably not going to be a long tenure for me as the guy here." Because even Marv is, you know, as his co-tight end, could see that this young guy was just an amazing talent, and he went on to be one of the all-time greats. He's, you know, there are a handful of guys that you play with. You're like, okay, how is this guy not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame? Yeah. And Ben is very, very high on that list. Where you know, he was a prototype for all these tight ends that you see today. Yeah. And he was a true tight end. He actually could block as well. He was just a glorified receiver. So yeah, Ben's a guy that should be wearing a gold jacket in addition to just the red one.
For sure. You came in the same draft class as another Patriots legend, Troy Brown. I know you mentioned that Parcels wasn't super high on him. How close was he to actually getting cut and not making the team?
Well, I think Parcells cut him twice.
That's true.
I think he kicked him down to the practice squad twice our rookie year. But Troy was a guy that I immediately picked out as special. Matter of fact, our first rookie minicamp, you know, I called my dad, and there was only one guy that I mentioned by name after my first practice, and that was Troy. I think he was wearing number 6 at the time, which in those days, you know, you couldn't be a receiver with a single-digit number. So that's how highly they thought of him at the time. They didn't even give him a real number, you know, as a rookie. But you know, Troy was and always a guy that you could 100% count on. He was always open, always caught the ball. I think Parcells kept kicking him down because he wasn't that big and didn't have a great 40 time, wasn't a speed burner. But as a quarterback, you know, it's really not about, you know, how big or how fast a guy is all that mattered to me is that he was always open and always caught the ball. And that's really simple as a quarterback. The criteria for receivers you like is exactly that simple.
Right.
Was Troy Brown, was he the one that caught a pass on his back?
Yes, he did. Yeah, down there against the Jets. It was,
Jets. Yeah.
It might have been the Giants. It was down in the Meadowlands. And you know, it was one of the very, very rare times that I made a poor throw, because in my memory I never made a bad throw. But this one, I threw it way behind Troy, and he slid on his back and reached back, laying on his back, and caught this ball that was just an amazing catch. Yeah, so Troy's, and now he's coaching for the Pats and doing a great job.
So you really played in an era with just some incredible, iconic Hall of Famers. What was that like your rookie year? You went up against Jim Kelly, Marino, Warren Moon. I mean, these are some of the legends of the game. Was that a little surreal?
It was totally surreal. It was totally surreal. You know, for me, you know, that draft class of 1983, that's when I was 11. And so I was like in my prime football fandom, you know, that age, you know, your early teenage years. Those were my guys. I had posters of them on my wall and all this stuff. And then, you know, next thing you know, I'm playing against them. And you know, now to this day, I get to call those guys my friends, which I just got to have dinner over in Buffalo with Jim Kelly and Dan Marino. And, you know, I'm 51 now, but, you know, I go sit down with those guys and all of a sudden I'm 12 again. You know, guys are still my heroes.
Call you the kid,
Yeah, I'm still the kid. Yeah, which is cool to be the kid when you're 51. But you know, my first start was at Buffalo, and I had just watched the Bills just a few months before that in the Super Bowl. Sitting in my dorm, you know, out in Pullman.
Yeah,
exactly. And then here comes Bruce Smith walking down out of the tunnel. I'm like, oh man, I'm in the wrong place. I don't belong here. And I remember I'm out there playing catch, and Jim Kelly walks by and slaps me on the butt and says, "Hey, good luck, Rook." I'm like, "Oh, thank you, Mr. Kelly."
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, even before that, I was so excited when you came in. I have vivid memories of that first preseason game in San Diego. I don't think you started that game. I remember you guys played on the baseball diamond back then.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I can't find video of this anywhere. I don't know if it was
just because it's in black and white.
Yeah, right. I remember being so excited. Do you remember that game at all? I think at the very end you had a drive to that could have possibly tied the game. You didn't end up scoring, but I remember that was like your first real kind of moment. Do you remember that
it was
game?
pretty fun. Got to go a little 2-minute offense. I have vague recollections of that, and I always felt really comfortable in in 2-minute offense. And I do remember. I think my first ever touchdown pass in the preseason was to Troy Brown.
Okay, wow, that's awesome.
Which was cool because it's like this is the guy that I thought I really liked, and my first ever touchdown pass was to Troy.
So coming into the league, you have one of the most hard ass coaches, Parcels. Did he take it easy on you? Did he kind of try to ease you in, or was it just like?
I don't think he ever took it easy on anybody. Sure. And if you were a rookie, especially if you're a rookie quarterback, he was definitely not going to take it easy on you. He would. Matter of fact, I tell people all the time, I loved Sundays for all the reasons that you would expect. But one of the things I liked best about Sundays was that Parcells always had to be at least 30, 35 yards away from me. So Sundays were a lot easier than the other days of the week, because he would stand right behind me, where I was throwing in practice, and he would stand like literally right behind me, but throw it. Like, so imagine imagine you're playing golf and somebody's yelling at you in the middle of your golf swing.
So, thanks, Coach. That makes me feel real relaxed.
It made Sundays feel a lot easier.
Oh man!
So rookie year, you come in, you lose a bunch of games to start, but it felt like the tides were changing at the end of that season. You guys really caught fire, and you ended the season really strong. Could you kind of feel then? All right, I think we kind of got something going here. Did you feel that momentum that rookie year?
I felt like at that point, we'd at least established that we could win some games, and the last game of the season, didn't really mean much to us, but the Dolphins, if they win that game, they're in the playoffs. If they don't, then they're out. So it became our playoff game, and we beat them at the very end, which was
a great game,
super exciting, and it was a great way to send it into the next year. And then we had another outstanding draft class that next year, and so we got Willie and who else was that draft class, but. We felt like things were moving the right direction, and shore some things up, and we were going to be competitive. So it was. Was it that next year that you went on the run? I think you were 3-6, and then you won. We were 3-6, and won our last 7 to get into the playoffs. First time we'd been in the playoffs for a long time, and then we had a lull in '95, and then '96 we made the run all the way to the Super Bowl. So. Unfortunately, we ran into Desmond Howard and Brett Favre in the Super Bowl and didn't win. I was on College Game Day a few years ago, and Desmond was on there. And I told him, man, look, I've still never forgiven you. I think we had just taken the lead, and he took the next kick.
That's right.
So I blame Desmond even more than Brett.
In '96, you got a really great. That the stud receiver Terry Glenn. Did you have any influence? I knew he wasn't Parcells' first choice. I think it was Kraft.
No, he was. Parcells wanted to go defense, and Kraft, overrode that decision. Matter of fact, when Mar and we got married that year, and Jonathan and Robert Kraft both flew out for the wedding, and my wedding present was Terry Glenn. And Terry, set that year the all-time rookie record for receptions. Went on to be a truly great player. I got to play with him again in Dallas. Right. And God rest your soul, Terry. He unfortunately passed away early.
His son too, right?
Yeah. Recently.
Terry
just he was a guy that I had an amazing relationship with, and just always loved him. And he was phenomenally talented. And we don't make the run to the Super Bowl that year without him for sure.
You guys seem to have chemistry right off the bat. What was special about Terry?
Terry was, he had natural gifts. He was very fast and explosive, but he was a really smart football player. He understood how to get separation, how to get himself open. And I also, I understood his body language right away. So I could tell when he was coming out of a break. So our timing and rapport, even early on, was really, really good. That
year, you guys were pretty stacked offensively. You had Coates, Glenn. Mm-hmm. Did you have Sean Jefferson?
Sean Jefferson, yep. Troy still.
Keith was Byers as well.
Had Meggett.
We had Curtis Martin
Byers,
too.
Curtis. So yeah, we had some dudes. For sure.
Mm-hmm. I think besides the Super Bowl run, I think one of the most impressive plays that season, actually, besides all the greatness that the numbers that you put up, was, do you remember that Hershel Walker return in Dallas?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And the guy who's an Olympic track runner gets run down. Was that one of the most incredible plays by a kicker you've ever seen?
Oh man, unbelievable. Matter of fact, I ended up playing for the Cowboys at the end of my career, and they still talked about that play and how much grief they gave Hershel for being run down by a kicker. It was pretty amazing.
All right, so Parcels leaves after that Super Bowl. You've played for some really, really iconic coaches. What was that transition like, going from Parcells to then Pete Carroll?
I love Pete and still do to this day. It was a very different demeanor.
Players coach.
Pete was all upbeat, and but he still demanded all the same things that Parcells did. You had to compete your ass off, and so even though the presentation was different, the big thing that hurt Pete, honestly, was that we really didn't draft very well there for a couple of years. And so as guys got older, we didn't have the younger generation to come up and replace them. Would have been fun to play for Pete for a long time, and I think we could be really successful. And obviously, he's gone on to be a Hall of Fame, coach. He may be one of those rare guys that potentially gets into 2 Halls of Fame as a coach, both in college and in the pros. And I'll actually see him this next weekend. I'm heading up for the Seahawks game next weekend, so I get a chance to bump into Pete down on the field before the game, which would be pretty cool.
That's awesome. So you go from Pete Carroll. You had a decent run. You guys made the playoffs a few times, and I guess the media ran him out of town. And then you get Belichick.
Right.
What's it like playing for Belichick? Because
it's what you think it is, honestly. It's very matter of fact. It's very businesslike. Belichick's actually a pretty easy guy to play for. It's very matter of fact. You either do your job and do it well, or we're going to replace you. And there's no, you don't have to guess what he's thinking. He'll tell you. Obviously, gone on to be arguably the greatest coach in NFL history, and even just this last week when everybody had predicted their demise, and finally able to step up and beat the Bills. Who saw that coming, right? But go ahead.
Is there a different side of him outside when the cameras are off? Does he have a hero
Oh yeah, man,
side?
it was so funny, man. We went back after I'd retired. We went back and did a wine deal. There was a little wine bar right by the stadium, Patriots Place. I don't think it's there anymore, but he came over for this wine deal, and all of a sudden he's smiling, he's laughing, he's sipping on a glass of wine. And I remember looking over, like, man, that looks like Bill Belichick, but that can't be him. Like, he's smiling, laughing, he's lighthearted, and he's funny.
Yeah.
And so you get him out of the office, and there's a different side to him for sure. But he's famously / notoriously all business around the office for sure.
All right, so progressing now on to the 2000 season, Tom Brady was on, I think it was the 4th string quarterback. He had, I think, completed 1 pass that year. What was he like back then? Before
Tom was always a guy that everybody loved and appreciated, and was a guy that he was over at our house, probably every other week for dinner, and he was always a guy that that I felt like, and I think everybody felt like, was going to be around for a long time. I don't think probably very many people other than Tom himself saw him as a starter in the NFL. And then for him to go on and have the amazing career that he had, it was cool to watch, and as bittersweet as it was to get hurt and have him come in and go on. Tom was always such a class guy and such a great teammate for everybody, that it made it easier after a while. It made it easier to for him and see all the great things that he's done.
So the game really has changed a ton with the rules with hitting the quarterback. And I think everyone knows about the Mo Lewis game and the hit. I think a lot of people don't realize, well, one, how serious it was. Did you even know it was that serious? Because you actually came back in that game.
Yeah, I came back in and played in the game. Yeah, I didn't know it was that serious until, really until kind of the end of the game when things started to hurt. And then by the time I got to the locker room, I was like, oh man, this is actually really hurting, to the point where they had to cut my jersey off because I couldn't pick it off.
Oh my God.
And then I didn't really know how serious it was until I woke up in the hospital later that night and found out looked down, I got a chest tube in my chest, pumping blood out of my chest, and recycle it and putting it back in. So thankfully, just count my blessings that we were there and had one of the world's great hospitals to take care of me, and one of the world's great doctors to make the decisions at the time, and elected not to open up my chest and go in to fix things, because had he done that, that's a whole different level of complication. Right. I got to rip your chest cavity open. Plus, to give me a weird tan line in the summertime. I don't know. But yeah, no, it was a crazy time. I was in the hospital for 5 or 6 days, and then couldn't do anything for a long time. And then when I came back, my job wasn't there anymore. So it was a crazy time for sure. But made it through it, and life is good. And because that happened, I actually, nobody thinks they want to go to Buffalo, but I got to Buffalo, and they have great fans as well, and then I got to play for the Cowboys for a couple of years, which it's like pitching for the Yankees. Everybody either loves. There's almost no there's kind of no ambivalence about the quarterback for the Cowboys. People either love you or they hate you. So it ended up being a heck of a ride. I don't have any regrets.
I just want to say thank you. Quick final thing. What did it mean to play in Boston, to be a Patriot? What are your lasting memories of playing here?
Yeah, it was a really cool thing then, and it's a really cool thing now. I think if you get to play in that market, obviously it's they love you or hate you depending on how the game went the last week. But if you do things the right way, and people know that you were giving it everything that you had, and handle yourself properly, the affection lasts for a long time. And so for me now, it's really fun to come back, because I find that it's not like it was. It's not like like this big deal. We got to get autographs and now selfies and all this stuff. It's more like I'm an old friend that came back home. We're walking down the streets in Boston, like, hey Drew, what's up, man? Good to see you. The wine business is good. And that's a really cool thing, because it just really feels like coming home when we come back there, which is a great feeling.
And lastly, before I let you go, I want to talk about what you're doing these days. I know myself, Steph, had a chance. I'm not a big wine drinker, but you now have this amazing, new, well, not new, but you've been doing for a while, this new venture into the wine business. Double back wines. What's that?
It's been super cool, man. When you grow up in a small town like I did, and then you get to go back home and have a business that's meaningful in the town, that's representing your little town to the world, and doing so in a hopefully a very first class way. It's a really meaningful thing. When you grow up in a small town, you really are raised by the entire town. And so to have something back there that's out there, representing our little place in a positive way. Matter of fact, I see you got some bottles sitting on your shelf.
Those are I will keep those forever. Just
yeah, I love it. I
those were
love
awesome.
it. No, it's been really, really fun. And the cool thing is, we just had a meeting this morning, and we've got 60 employees now. It's a real company. But I talk about, football a lot with our team, maybe more than they would like. Me reliving old war stories. But in order to be successful, really any endeavor, it requires the same kinds of things that football required. You've got to have a great team around you. You've got to plan well. You've got to execute. You've got to learn to embrace adversity when it comes along. You've got to adapt. You've got to overcome. You've got to do all of these things that come at you. And so being able to pass along some of the lessons that I learned from quarterbacking of football teams into helping to run a business has been pretty cool. And so there are a lot of things I love about it. And at the end of the day, we get to sit around and drink wine and call that work. So life is pretty good.
I think it's also great. I know you mentioned how you offer health insurance to a lot of the
Oh yeah, we take good care of our employees.
Just really good.
Yeah, we've embraced this sustainability initiative, both in how we treat the land and how we treat the environment, but also in how we treat our people. We don't have seasonal labor anymore. We have our own farming company where, rather than people working for 6, 7, 8 months at a time, and then finding another way to sustain their family, they work for us year round, and they have health insurance, retirement benefits, and most importantly, they have stability in their lives for the very first time, in their modern family history. So, and it works really well for us because now they treat our business as if they own the business. They're not just employees; they have real ownership in what's going on in the vines and in the vineyards.
I love it.
I'll finish up with this. The most meaningful thing that actually, aside from football, that you had mentioned is you wanted to run a business that will make your mom proud. And my last question is she proud?
Yeah, she is proud. Mom's proud of how we do things. And she also really likes the wine too, which is good. They both mom and dad, they were both school teachers, grew up with farming backgrounds. So there wasn't a lot of fine wine sitting on the table at dinner growing up, but they both actually really enjoy a good bottle of wine now. So I'm proud to say that I've spoiled them a bit.
Drew, I can't thank you enough for your time. It's been such a pleasure to talk to the man really that turned the whole franchise from a laughing stock to respectability. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. Hopefully, I hope to get out to your vineyard sometime soon.
Yeah.
Come out and see us. Yeah, it's just fire me an email when you want to come out. We'll make sure you're well taken care of. It's a pretty fun place to visit.
Can't wait, Drew. I'll let you go. I know you're a busy man. Thank you so much. Talk soon, hopefully.
All right, right on. Appreciate you guys.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Have a good one.
You must be blinded by the lights. We came to shine here. Watch it look daytime in the night.